Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about blocks and some caveats with Java blocks. So a block in Java is basically a unit of statements together and they execute together. So for example, um, for these kinds of things where you have a for loop, right? You have sort of like the header and then like the body of that loop. And then as we've seen with all the methods, I mean, even main is a method, right? So a method consists of a header, which is this line, and then a body. So the body is enclosed inside these curly braces to denote that there are statements in this block, in this whole block, that will be executed, right? So now methods, just at this level right now that we're talking about, methods require a body, okay? And so if you don't put these braces, Java will get mad at you. So let's just try something, right? Let's say public void, um, try things, try something out, right? Let's just call this our sort of method, and let's just say I end my statement there. Let's say I end my method there, and it's going to be like, okay, you're missing the method body, right? And then, so I put in the method body, and it's no longer mad at me, okay? And the semicolon, really in Java, all it does is it ends statements. And so with this, you're fine. Java will tell you that you don't have a body. But what's interesting about for loops and while loops is that often we write them with the method, or no, sorry, not the method, the body, like a block of statements that we execute for every iteration. Now, what's interesting about those is that they don't necessarily require a body, which can make things a little tricky. So let's say, right? So let's say I want to do this. Let me just copy this over, and you know, I haven't ended anything here with a semicolon, or like I don't even have a block of statements, and it's telling me, okay, like this is not right. Now, I can go ahead and type in a semicolon, which is could be one of the common things that people do, beginners start out doing, is they think, okay, I need a semicolon here. What that actually does is it ends that statement. It ends the for loop without having anything in there, without having anything in the block. This is the same thing as saying, okay, well, I'm going to get rid of these two lines, and I just have an empty body. Okay, so this line is the same thing as this, which is not great, because that means if you put this down here, and Java will allow this, it's very interesting. Java allows braces just anywhere, just kind of like floating out in the open, and they act as a unit of statements together. I don't think we'll go over that, but you can definitely do this, and Java will allow this. And you'll have some statements in here you can execute. But what this is doing is if you have the semicolon here, none of this counts as the body. If you can see, like, the color of these two are actually different. So the color of this is like pinkish, and the color of this block is more purple. And if you look at the proper for loop, where it contains a body, the whole thing, all of these lines are actually contained within the pink box. And this is like a separate thing outside of the for loop. So if you do this, you're basically saying empty body. And you're not going to, all these statements that are here will only print once instead of looping like you want it to, right? So if I go ahead and do this, and I'm just going to go ahead and comment these out. Okay, So now let's go over to, I'm going to delete that real quick. Remove compile, and we'll go ahead and run main. Okay, so it only prints out once, high once. And here we know that the turtle array length is like 5, but it only prints out this once because it's not repeating 5 times. This does not count inside the for loop. If we move the semicolon, you can see that the color of everything else changes. And now if we, let me clear this and compile and then run this again, right? Now we'll get 5 highs, okay? And so something that you really want to be careful of is, especially is with the while loops. So while loops, they generally, something tricky can happen, right? We know that in writing a while loop, we need to actually explicitly declare the I0, and then let's actually just copy those over so we can see what's going on, right? The proper way is to say, all right, well, I need to increment, right? The whole point of a while loop, uh, and the whole, like the core thing about a while loop is that it sort of requires manual work to increment the counter, the I counter here. And so if you don't have I inside the while loop, this is never going to get executed. And let me show you what that looks like. So if I have a semicolon here, as usual, right, Java allows this code to be standalone and do things on its own. Well, now the while loop just kind of stands out there and has no body whatsoever. Now, if this were true, right, and let me just make this like I is less than 5. So this is true, right? 0 is less than 5. Now it has no body whatsoever, which means it will not get here until the while loop stops. And the only way while loops stop is, typically we increment so that I becomes greater than 5, but because this block right here is separate from the while loop, it actually does not get executed in the while loop. So because it's just the same thing as saying, okay, well, I'm not doing anything in the while loop. I'm just repeating, and every time I repeat, I'm not incrementing I just stays at 0, and so it just keeps repeating like that. And so you want to be careful of this error. You don't want to see semicolons right after while loops or for loops, especially while loops, because that can give you an infinite loop error, which means your code just keeps running and gets stuck here and does nothing. Or if this were to be 6, right? If this were 6, then 6 is less than 5, and it actually does not, this condition is false already, and so this line does not really run. It doesn't do anything, and this just runs once. Okay, so any block of code after a semicolon, after a while or a for loop, only gets executed once because it's not under the loop, so it doesn't repeat at all. Okay, so that's just something, a caveat that you guys want to be careful of.